What if I told you that before farmers, before bronze, before cities, Europe was home to a different kind of man? Men who hunted in endless forests. Men who saw glaciers melt and rivers form. Men who left behind no kingdoms, no written stories, only bones, tools, and fragments of their DNA. That DNA still survives today. And it has a name, Haplogroup I2, one of Europe's oldest and most mysterious paternal lineages. Long before the Great Migrations, before Indo-Europeans swept in from the steppes, Europe was already populated by hunter-gatherers whose ancestors had arrived tens of thousands of years earlier. They were the true first Europeans, descendants of Ice Age survivors who lived and adapted entirely within the continent. When the last Ice Age began to fade, around 15,000 years ago, small groups of these resilient people followed the retreating glaciers north, repopulating a thawing Europe. They hunted mammoths and reindeer. They carved tools from stone. And deep in their Y chromosomes, they carried the I2 signature. Haplogroup I2 is one branch of an even older genetic lineage, Haplogroup Y, which split from its Eurasian ancestor about 40,000 years ago. This means that the I lineage, including I2, is native to Europe in a way few others are. While other haplogroups like R1b and R1a came from migrations out of the steppe or the Near East, I2 was born and evolved right here. In simple terms, if you carry I2, your paternal line never left Europe. Your ancestors hunted, fished, and survived through every ice age that tested the continent. During the harshest glacial periods, most of Europe was uninhabitable. Ice sheets buried the north, and vast tundras covered the center. But a few places, the refuges, remained habitable. In the Balkans, Iberia, and southern France, small groups of humans endured. When the ice finally retreated, these refugees became the cradle of rebirth. From here, Haplogroup I2 began to spread again, slowly, quietly, into the empty lands of northern Europe. By 10,000 years ago, I2 men were living across the continent, from the Balkans to Scandinavia. They were the kings of Europe before kings existed. Then came the farmers. Around 7000 BCE, agriculture began spreading from Anatolia into Europe, a revolution in how humans lived. These early farmers brought new technologies, domesticated animals, and new DNA, especially haplogroups G2A and E1b1b. For centuries, the old hunter-gatherers and new farmers coexisted uneasily. They traded, they mixed, and sometimes they fought. Archaeological evidence shows that in places like the Danube Basin, hunter-gatherer I2 groups survived alongside farming communities for over 1,000 years. But slowly, the world of the hunters faded, absorbed or replaced by waves of agricultural societies. Yet, remarkably, I2 didn't vanish. In regions like the Balkans, Carpathians, and Scandinavia, I2 lineages endured long after other ancient haplogroups disappeared. Why? Because the men carrying I2 were adapted to wild Europe. They lived in forests, fished the rivers, hunted elk and boar, long after farming spread. They didn't depend on cities or crops. They depended on skill, memory, and resilience. Their isolation became their shield. While new migrations swept across the plains, I2 men survived in the mountains and forests, untouched by time. By around 4000 BCE, Europe was no longer a continent of pure farmers or pure hunters. The two worlds had merged. Ancient DNA studies from sites in Croatia, Germany, and France show that I2 men often married into farming societies, passing their Y chromosomes down through generations. The result was a hybrid culture, one that blended the traditions of the forest with the technologies of the fields. When steppe herders carrying R1b and R1a eventually arrived, they encountered this already mixed population. Farmers with deep European roots and the blood of I2 men in their veins. Though they left no written history, the people of I2 shaped the DNA landscape of Europe. Today, the highest frequencies of I2 are found in the Balkans, particularly Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia, with rates between 30% and 70% in some regions. Other pockets remain in Scandinavia, Central Europe, and parts of Eastern Europe, where isolated valleys and mountains kept these lineages alive. For example, in the Dinaric Alps, a branch called I2A Din dominates. In the Carpathians, another branch, I2A CTS 10228, traces ancient local continuity. In the British Isles, small traces of I2 date back to Mesolithic hunter-gatherers before the Beaker invasion. It's as if each forest, each mountain range, guarded its own chapter of this forgotten European story. The most remarkable revelation about I2 is what it tells us about the earliest humans in Europe. Every I2 branch is like a fossil written in genes, a snapshot of survival and isolation. Through genome sequencing, scientists have confirmed that Mesolithic hunter-gatherers in Croatia, Germany, and Spain carried I2. The Lochboer man, a 8,000-year-old skeleton from Luxembourg, was I2A1. Cheddar man, Britain's famous 9,000-year-old ancestor, also carried I2, dark skin, blue eyes, and all. These were the original Europeans, long before anyone spoke Celtic, Slavic, or Germanic languages. In the modern age, R1b and R1a dominate Europe's genetic map. I2, by comparison, seems like a whisper, a memory of something older. But make no mistake, without I2, Europe's story would be incomplete. Every castle, every farm, every city today stands on land first hunted and claimed by I2 men. When you trace your Y-DNA back beyond the Bronze Age, beyond the first Indo-Europeans, you find them, the quiet survivors who watched civilizations rise and fall. They weren't conquerors, they were the foundation. If you carry I2, your ancestors didn't follow empires. They endured them. They saw the glaciers melt, the herds migrate, and the forests return. They adapted when others perished. That endurance is written in the data. Unlike most haplogroups, I2 has an extraordinarily deep continuity, surviving multiple population turnovers that wiped others away. Some scientists even call it Europe's backbone lineage, ancient, stubborn, unbroken. Technically, I2 is a Y chromosome haplogroup, passed from father to son. It diverged from I1, common in Scandinavia, around 27,000 years ago. Subclades like I2A1, I2A2, and I2C correspond to different Ice Age refuges. For example, I2A1 likely originated in the Balkans, I2A2 spread through Central and Western Europe, and I2C may trace back to Western hunter-gatherers. Modern genetic research, from projects like the 1000 Genomes Project and the Ancient Genomes Initiative, continues to refine our understanding of I2's vast internal branches. Each subclade is like a fingerprint of migration and adaptation. When the Yamnaya and Bell Beaker expansions, carrying R1b and R1a, swept across Europe 5,000 years ago, most ancient male lines disappeared, but I2 refused to vanish. In many regions, steppe men married women descended from I2 communities, and over time, these local bloodlines mixed into the fabric of new societies. Today, that blending remains visible in genetic studies. In southeastern Europe, the fusion of I2 and R1a created the core of modern Slavic populations. In Western Europe, I2's legacy can still be found beneath the dominance of R1b. In a world of change, I2 adapted and survived again. So why does haplogroup I2 matter today? Because it reminds us that not every story is one of conquest. Some are stories of survival, of living quietly, enduring patiently, while the world changes around you. We often celebrate the DNA of invaders and kings. But I2 belong to those who stayed, the keepers of Europe's oldest fires. When scientists extract DNA from a skeleton deep in a cave and see the I2 signature, they're not just reading data. They're hearing the heartbeat of Europe before history began. The story of haplogroup I2 is the story of Europe before civilization, before borders, wars, and empires. It's the story of men who followed herds instead of armies, who read rivers instead of books, and who passed down a legacy of endurance written not in words but in genes. So if you carry I2, you carry the memory of the first men to call Europe home. And even if you don't, you still walk in their footsteps, through their forests, across their mountains, breathing the same ancient air they once did. The first Europeans never left. They're still here, inside us all.